While it may not be as exciting as UFC 217 on November 4th at Madison Square Garden, UFC 216 this Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada promises to deliver two incredible championship bouts nonetheless. Hello sports fans, I'm Andrew Michael Stoll. Welcome to the first ever edition of Stone on Sports, where we go against the grain. Of course, as you know, I have the pleasure of welcoming the one and only MMA mastermind, Adam Dakk. How are you, man?
Man, I'm glad to be here. We're finally on air. This looks good. Not only do people get to hear how good we sound, also how good we look.
That's absolutely correct. You're looking fresh, my man.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about UFC 216. There's two championship bouts that are going to take place, and a lot of people think that maybe for somebody like Demetrious Johnson, this is an opportunity for him to show that he's as marketable as they come.
Absolutely. Look, he's going to be able to create history come Saturday night with a record-breaking title defense against Ray Borg. It's an incredible fight, and honestly, it hurts me to see that it's not the main event.
Yeah, a lot of people have made that point as well. But again, this is an opportunity for DJ to really show what he's got and to make history.
Absolutely, and this is also the first time that DJ will actually get pay-per-view points. And when you have a great title fight, an interim title fight between Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson, I think it's going to be a big success.
All right, so let's start with the co-main event, shall we? All right, very important to take into consideration in the flyweight division, Ray Borg versus Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. Now, if you look at the stats on your screen right now, you'll notice that from a physical standpoint, there isn't a whole lot that separates these two fighters.
You're absolutely right. Only a 3-inch reach advantage for Demetrious Johnson. Other than that, physically, it's a similar match, absolutely.
Okay, so what are your three keys for somebody like Ray Borg to take it to the 10-time defending flyweight champion?
Well, here's the thing for Ray Borg. The first thing he's going to have to do, he's going to have to cut DJ off, because if you look at his fights, DJ is always moving. He never moves backwards. You'll never catch him with his back on the fence. He's always cutting angles, so you really need to cut him off. And the second key is he's going to have to smother him as well, put the pressure on him, keep moving forward in that sense. And finally, and this is my favorite one, Ray Borg needs to actually pray to whoever he prays to hope that DJ will actually make a mistake, because if there's one thing about DJ and the reason why he's the first and only reigning flyweight champion, he doesn't make mistakes.
No, he doesn't, and that's one of the things that makes him one of the greatest champions of all time. I know you're a huge Mighty Mouse Johnson fan, so tell me something. What does he have to do to beat Ray Borg? What are the three keys?
You know what? I'm always giving three keys to victory, but with DJ, there's only one. As long as he comes in healthy, all he needs to do is what he's always done. DJ just needs to be himself, and that is it.
Really?
Absolutely.
Those are your three keys.
That's my three keys. 3 in 1. 3 in 1.
Right.
Look, he does it all. He's a great wrestler. He's a great jiu-jitsu guy. He's incredible in the clinch. His striking, I mean, his evolution has been nothing but magical. That's the truth.
Absolutely, and he's looked so good. He barely gets touched, barely gets tagged when he's doing his fights. You know, he's always looked good at the end of his fights and everything. No significant injuries in his career either. So I really think, for me personally, I'm gonna have to go with Mighty Mouse. Who you got?
Obviously Mighty Mouse as well, but we gotta remember something. Just over a year ago, a guy named Michael Bisping on 9 days' notice got his first time ever, his title shot, and knocked out Luke Rockhold cold in the first round.
Well, no upsets, I think, in this particular case might take place. But one thing that is relatively upsetting for us, in case you guys haven't followed us on SoundCloud, on our podcast, we talk about how upsetting these infamous interim title belts are.
Listen, it's very simple. Interim belts have a reason, they have a purpose when the champion is inactive due to injury or something major like that. But now in the UFC, in the new vision of the UFC, what we're seeing are interim belts being thrown all over the place to gain pay-per-view momentum and all that. There's a question of legitimacy that has to be put into place. This is a legitimate fight, don't get me wrong. Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson is a real fight, and hopefully the winner of that will get to face Conor McGregor, because right now we all know he's doing his own thing.
Exactly. At the 155-pound division, in the lightweight division, I should say, I think a lot of people are convinced and know that really Conor McGregor is the champion, but he's taking a break right now. He's probably going to come back in 2018. So let's talk about Tony Ferguson, and let's talk about the Motown phenom, Kevin Lee. Right off the bat, if you look at their stats, what do you see?
Listen, you can see that Tony Ferguson on paper is the one who should be taking the fight. He's got more knockouts, he's got more fights, he's got more submissions, he's got his overall knowledge in MMA is much greater probably than Kevin Lee. But Kevin Lee, we should not sleep on Kevin Lee. He's, you know, it looks like he popped out of nowhere, right? He didn't have any high-profile fights like Tony Ferguson, but let me tell you something about this guy. This guy is a good-looking guy. He's great on camera. He loves the media. He's got skills to back it up as well. We've mentioned it before. I think he's the next great superstar. I think this is going to be the upset of the night. I think Kevin Lee is actually going to take it.
Well, it's really interesting because he's a number 7 ranked lightweight fighter in that division, and he's got a lot to prove because a lot of people look at him and they tend to think that he's a little arrogant, maybe a little brash, too much of a trash talker. But like you said, in order to become a superstar in the UFC these days, you have to have that presence, and I think that's something that's really important. So let's talk about Kevin Lee, since you said that you believe he's going to take it.
Yeah.
What are his 3 keys to victory?
Listen, the first thing, I find he's an excellent wrestler, so he needs to use his wrestling to his advantage in that sense. Also, we've seen some nasty ground and pound from him. His elbows are wicked when he's on the ground. And he must not himself get into a brawl against Tony Ferguson. We've heard this thing called the Mexican-style fighter, which Tony Ferguson is Mexican. This guy is relentless. He will continue moving forward, so he needs to be smart about that.
El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson, what are his 3 keys?
Tony Ferguson, what he needs to do, he needs to keep the pressure and move forward. That's the first thing. The second thing, no funky stuff. He likes to do cartwheels and flips all over the ground. He is susceptible to getting hurt with that. And the last but not least is also to keep his hands up. If you look at the fights with Michael Johnson, if you look at the fight with Lando Venata, he is susceptible to getting cracked really, really hard.
What's next for either one of these fighters?
Well, look, this is the challenge we've been discussing is, you know, what do we do with this winner? If Kevin Lee wins, he was number 7, hasn't had any high-profile fights other than Tony Ferguson, maybe Michael Chiesa. Does he get a title shot against Conor McGregor? This is out in the air because right now rankings don't mean a whole lot in the UFC.
I think it's really going to depend because I'm of the same opinion as you. I think the Motown Phenom is the one who's going to take it against El Cucuy. The only thing is, it's all going to depend also on how he deals with the media after his potential victory. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself either, but if he does and he calls out Conor McGregor and people start buying into that hype, and all the guys like on the Stone on Sports podcast or the Joe Rogan podcast or wherever start talking about Kevin Lee as the next best thing, I think then we've got something serious going on, and it'd be really cool, I think, to see Conor McGregor versus Kevin Lee in the future.
Or even if it's Tony Ferguson that wins the fight, this would be an exceptional fight too. I want to see the belt be legitimized. I want to see the number 1 ranked versus the champion. It's a sport. It's a sport, and I'm an MMA purist, as I've mentioned before. I really hope that they actually give the winner of this belt, the interim belt, a fight with Conor McGregor.
Yeah, I would think that would be great too because El Cucuy and McGregor are both stand-up specialists, so it'd be really interesting to see. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. This is our first ever video edition of the Stone on Sports podcast, essentially, where we go against the grade. That's Adam Dakk. I'm Andrew Michael Stone. We'll catch you guys soon.